My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be The Wrightbrothers 4, The Planning Notebook. This is my novel, The Wrightbrothers, Flight is Possible, a novel by John Passfield. In this video, I'm going to read from the planning notebook which I wrote while planning and writing the novel. The title of the notebook is Planning the Wrightbrothers, Flight is Possible, and it can be found and accessed for free on my website, John Passfield, small letters, all one word.ca. It covers a span of a year and a half, from September of 2003 to May 2005, from the first note on the topic of a potential novel to the polishing of the rough draft. The novel is 60,000 words and the notebook is 63,000 words, so they're about the same. In this reading, I'm going to present 5 passages of a sample of what the Wrightbrothers notebook contains. So here's the very first note that I wrote. This is way back in 2003, 19 years ago as I'm reading it now. I just had a great idea. The Wrightbrothers as a novel. It would lend itself to cycles, though I'm not sure what they'd be. It'd be very positive to me. They are true heroes. I first came across them when looking for a book on how to make a World War I flyer model for Pinafore Park. Okay, so Pinafore Park, this is my novel, Pinafore Park, The Swan Boat Incident, a novel by John Passfield. I was writing a book, and a boy in the book makes an airplane model. Well, in 1925, what model would you use? I looked through a book of models, and there was the Wright flyer. So, the Wrightbrothers. The first model in the book was for the Wright flyer, and that led to books about the Wrightbrothers and the imagery of the novel. So I used the Wrightbrothers as imagery in that novel, Pinafore Park. I was amazed at the two. 5 points here. I'll number them. 1, they were brothers. 2, scientific and mathematical. 3, artistic. The whole imagery of flight, mankind seeking to soar. 4, persistent. 5, successful. So those qualities fascinated me. The story has drama and tension. It is centennial right now. In other words, 1903 was the Wright centennial. So number 1, 1903, the first heavier-than-air flight. 2, 1909, the first successful demonstration of flight. So obviously I was interested in Wrights because it was the centennial and getting a lot of notice. Okay. Here's the second passage from this planning notebook. I'm assuming that I won't distinguish between Orville and Wilbur in this novel. I've read quite a few books on them, but don't know them well enough as individuals to have any sense of their differences. What drew me to them is their accomplishment and their oneness. They shared their interest in flying, of course, and that would include any interest in the Greek myths. So intriguing to me was that I had read a lot about Orville and Wilbur and Orville, but I didn't see them as individuals. And the whole point was they were the perfect couple. If any two countries, if any two nations, if any two religions or races can get along, have a look at the Wright brothers. They got along so well that in reading about them, you hardly see them as separate. They were, a single unit of two who accomplished wonderful things. So that was fascinating to me as imagery, as a topic about which I could write. 3, the third passage. Of course, flying itself is a metaphor. The hopes and fears are not just about physical flying. For the Greeks, all of mankind are the Wright brothers. You have 3 points. The physical act of flying, hopes and fears. 2, the difficulties of having a perfect human relationship, which is what appealed to me in the title, Flight is Possible, which refers to the possibility of a perfect human relationship. 2 or more people harmonizing for the pursuit of a positive outcome. The 2 people harmonizing for their own good and for that of others. Well, they did something good for all of humankind. 3, all hopes and fears for all humankind. Will we work together to harness the forces of nature in order to do good for all of humankind? Hope. Or will we harness nature in order to do harm to all of humankind? And with the pursuit of the control of these forces, destroy our relationships and drive us apart. So that was kind of the the gist of the concept of the Wright brothers novel. It is the various levels in the story, the shape of the novel, and the title that have a mythical appeal for me. Wilbur and Orville are mankind, humankind. And when they work together, they can accomplish wonderful things that are of benefit to all. Apart, as they were physically, one stayed with the U.S. Army in Washington, one went and demonstrated the French Army in France. So they were apart physically at one point. The delicate balance in their relationship fails, and things fall apart, quoting the famous poem by Yeats. It is the other side of Rain and Fire and Victoria Day. Now I'm going to hold these up. I had written Rain of Fire, The Ordeal of Conductor Spedigue, a novel by John Passfield. I had written Victoria Day, The Fabric of the Community, a novel by John Passfield. So it's the other side of those two stories, Rain of Fire and Victoria Day. It is a successful human endeavor that this novel will be about. So they were both about disasters, communities suffering disasters. This will be about two people who represent not only their community, but all of humankind, not suffering disaster, but doing something wonderful. Of course, it will have hints of the dangers of greater control over nature, but no more than hints. It will be a very positive novel. The trick will be to build in enough suspense and temporary setbacks to make it all a fascinating narrative of scientific accomplishment and of human interaction. Wilbur and Orville were a successful couple, a successful human unit, an archetype for all human interaction, for artistic, scientific, and philosophical process. Okay, number 4, the fourth passage. This novel will be 16 chapters times 6,000 words, 48 or 50,000 words. That was my prediction, and I think I said at the beginning it was, 52,000 words. Did I say? No, 60,000 words. Okay. So I predicted 50,000, and I hit 60,000. It will be written from the voluminous secondary sources available. It will be about the perfect human relationship. It will be about the romance of the machine age with some underlying warnings included, probably suggested by the mythological items. I'm looking forward to the poetry of modernity, so to write a poetic novel about machinery, an airplane. The Wilbur and Orville cycles might change order at some time in the planning stages. I don't have a clear sense of how to interweave the trials, accident, injury, recuperation from injury, and trip to France of Orville, and the reunion with shared success in France with the successes in France of Wilbur. I took a while to decide the order of the visit home and childhood chapters in Water Lane. Okay, I'll hold that up. An earlier written novel, always building on something I've already done, The Pilgrimage of Christopher Marlowe by John Passfield. So you build a new novel based on the lessons you learned or the difficulties you faced and didn't quite solve or overcome in the novels you've written in the past. I'll read that again. I took a while to decide the order of the visit home and childhood chapters in Water Lane, although the order seems so obvious now, right? So you solve a problem, you look back and you say, well, of course, why did I have to brood? Why didn't I just think of that instantly? I was thinking as I drove home in the car that the last chapter of the Wright brothers novel, chapter 16, should actually interweave the first flight in 1903 at Kitty Hawk with the reunion and shared success in France in 1909. With extensive reading, the whole pattern will emerge from the details. So when in doubt, do more thinking, do more reading of sources. 5. Fifth passage. This is the first full day of working on the novel Flight is Possible. There was a time when I felt a little distance from the topic, 2 or 3 months ago, and felt that it was almost an obligation to write the novel. But I've been gathering books about the Wrights and jotting notes while polishing Water Lane and the making of Water Lane for a day or two now, and I can see exactly what it was that I was so enthusiastic about. I will enjoy writing the novel, and the planning stage will be very pleasurable, as I've learned so much in writing the 6 earlier novels. So obviously the Wright brothers would be my 7th. The mystery of how they use the myths is already solving itself based on my review of Leander in Water Lane, I think. And the complexity of the Wrights' problems and solutions, which is so vague to me now in terms of my structure, will become clear as I read and plan together. So I think it did work out. I'm very pleased with the resulting novel. But that's when I was just figuring out, well, how is this going to work? Here's a conclusion, but a conclusion that I wrote while I was reading this over, many years later, obviously. The Wright brothers' story, as I knew when I chose it to write about, was and is the perfect story to turn into a poetic novel, as the dynamic interplay is not just between the Wrights themselves and the challenge of inventing the airplane, but the interplay between ourselves and the challenges of our own personal lives. We're all creative. We all pit the everyday circumstances and events of our lives against the mythical patterns of the lives that all human experience has suggested to us as presenting, with all the barriers and the freedoms, the limitations and the potentials that lie before us, beckoning and threatening as we begin our day. Failure and achievement, large and small, are both available to all of us because we're all born into what we have come to think of as the human condition. That the Wrights took their everyday realities, small town, bicycle mechanics, desire to fly, kitty hawk, technical challenges, and made them into a myth that divided all time into two divisions. Number one, before human-powered controlled flight, and number two, after human-powered controlled flight is magnificent. But it is important to remember that although their achievement is one of the heights of human challenge and achievement, the pattern of the Wright story is the everyday pattern of every life on the planet. We all take the everyday reality of our lives and mold it as much as we can, whether consciously or subconsciously, mold it as much as we can to an ideal of making our situations, our circumstances, and even ourselves better than they were when we started the day. The Wright brothers' story is a story of creativity, and as such, it is a pattern of the creative endeavor in our own daily lives. To create an airplane, to create a novel, to create the positive experiences of the day is the universal challenge of humankind. So, the notebook can be accessed for free on my website, John Passfield, small letters, all one word, .ca. Thank you for watching this video.